Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that takes your career to the next level. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, author of Amazon Careers bestseller, Navigating Career Crossroads.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. There are over 180,000 book titles to choose, so give it a go and get your free audiobook today from audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. Well, hello and welcome back to my Careers podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have on the show public relations and marketing expert Reuben Lawrence, who is the marketing director for Southeast Asia at NBC Universal. Reuben is now based in Singapore. However, he started his career in London working agency side in public relations before moving to Sydney and continuing in PR until joining global giant Sony, focusing on marketing for over 7 years. Due to a business realignment, Reuben took a redundancy package and then embraced the opportunity to turn to building and releasing apps into the Apple and Google app stores. He found that this new skill helped to open an entirely new line of discussion during his networking and interviewing process to secure a new role. And in April this year, Reuben secured a fabulous role at NBC Universal, based in Singapore, as marketing director, handling 4 paid TV channels across the Southeast Asian region: E! Entertainment News, the female-focused channel Diva, Universal Channel, and Sci-Fi. Now, let's find out about Reuben's career journey and what has contributed to his success. So good morning, Reuben, and welcome.
Good morning, Jane. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on the show. I can't wait to find out all about your career path, because you've gone from London to Sydney to Singapore, and there have been so many changes, and you're in such a great role at the moment. So how about, to kick us off, you tell us about your early days and your career aspirations?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for your kind words. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. In terms of my aspirations, I guess looking back on it now, well, I'm not ashamed to say I didn't really have any. I think when I'd love to be able to say, when I was 7, I really wanted to be a vet, or I pined after being a doctor, and it just wasn't like that for me. I took my time ultimately to find out what I wanted to do, and when I was studying, marketing and PR was one module. It was such a short amount of time when you're studying, but ultimately I've always been a communicator. I was always the guy in the when we have debates that was always pushed forward. Oh, you can talk, you can explain things well. So I was the guy that was kind of pushed forward. So I guess to say I fell into it, or it found me, I'm not sure. But certainly, I guess I hope, fingers crossed, I speak for many when I said, at the stage when you're supposed to be making decisions about a career, it was too early for me. I needed a bit more time.
Actually, it happens to so many people, when it comes to careers. They're not sure of what they really want to be when they grow up. And then they're pushed into certain roles, and they choose courses at uni thinking, is this going to define me for the rest of my career? But probably, as you found, when you started your career, there have been multiple changes. And so when you left high school, what happened? What did you decide, and what did you study?
I studied business studies because it was so broad. To be absolutely honest, it didn't pigeonhole me. I guess the next step for me was that I got talking and ended up working in a PR agency. I mean, it sounds bizarre. I started at the lowest of the low. It was and only thing I knew about PR was what I'd studied in class, which was not very much. So it was a steep learning curve, But I was stuffing envelopes and delivering the post and all that sort of stuff. But it really gave me an understanding of what the business of PR was and indeed is. I was lucky that the agency that I was working for, its primary client was Nintendo, the video game company. So and that was at the height of Mario and Mario v Sonic Wars and all that kind of cool stuff.
I remember all that.
Yeah. As a young man, it was working in video game PR in London in the mid '90s. I won't lie to you, Jane, it was a fabulous place to be. I progressed through the PR route, I suppose, working up through junior account executive, senior account executive, junior account manager, etc., etc. I always stayed within the consumer and I guess ultimately consumer technology, if you like. It was that's a passion of mine, but I understood it. I understand it. I understand how things work, and I'm able to communicate. I hope I'm able to communicate that effectively to other audiences, whoever those audiences happen to be. So I moved up through a few agencies in London, purely PR. So I worked up through before working in one agency where I sounds so cliched, where I met a girl and we got together and
Such a good story you're spinning here, Ruben.
It's not spin. That's the thing, Jane. It's not spin. And anyway, long and short of it was, Tamsin, my now wife, she's Australian, and she just said, for a variety of reasons, her family was back in Sydney. She said, well, hey, how about we move to Sydney? And that completely sideswiped me. I had no concept of being able to move to another country. Even though I've seen lots of other people do it, it just it wasn't even on my radar from a career perspective. But if you don't shoot, you don't score, as many people say. So hopped on the plane, packed our stuff up, arrived in Sydney with 20 boxes, 1 7-iron and no job.
And so, that must have been really daunting for you, as two adults moving country, going back to your wife's home country, which would have been wonderful for her, but for you, it would have been really daunting. So how did you settle in once you moved here? It was daunting. I won't sugarcoat it. Yeah, of course it's daunting, but it's actually, and I've done it a couple of times now, it's actually really interesting. Learning is learning something new, learning about a new environment, learning how to be ultimately a new culture, about how things work, about all of that sort of stuff it's actually really interesting, and it kind of keeps you going, and it makes those first sort of 3, 6, 12 months kind of fly by, because you're not just doing the same old thing, going to work every day. You're learning about so many different things in the wider environment. So I was lucky. My wife's had a good network of friends, and everyone got on spectacularly. So I was kind of delivered into this sort of ready-made network of friends, which was great. One of those friends, who Tamsin used to work with, there was a role going at a PR agency who she happened to know, and introduced me to a guy. And the next thing I know, I after a couple of months, I have a job in a Sydney PR agency, running a PR team within a broader sales and marketing organisation. What I like to hear is that's your network working for you, rather than hopping online, applying for a role, registering with a recruiter, hoping they'll find you a role. It was because somebody knew you, they knew your personality and your aptitudes, and was able to make a recommendation, which secured your first role in a completely new country, new city, where you didn't have an extensive network to start off with.
That's right, and it's right place, right time. But ultimately you make your luck, right? So you've got to put yourself in those situations, and allow that stuff to happen to you, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's and we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about the importance of network. But it was great. So was working in North Sydney for a PR agency, and ultimately it got to the point within the agency where it was time for me to leave. I kind of hit my ceiling. I'd worked up from junior junior account exec kind of all the way through. And so I thought, well, I'm not sure what's happening next, so I'll jump out of there and freelance for a bit, which I did. And then a role came up as a job share up at Sony, which was one of my clients at the agency. Because you get to know your clients when you work in agency side. But this role popped up, so I went to work up there, and was working 3 days a week, and then for one team, and then someone else in another team was like, hey, well, can you come and help me out on this? So my glorious days of freelance, I was had a great time. I was sailing on Mondays and doing all sorts of things because all this newfound free time that I had just quickly got consumed by 5 days a week up at Sony. Yes, go on.
Can I just ask this, because it's so interesting, like you're a PR man through and through to start off with, and then you moved in agency side, and then you went client side. And I know that your career path went from PR to marketing, and a lot of people don't understand the difference between the two. Can you just give a brief explanation of the difference between public relations versus marketing, should anyone want to get into that?
Sure. It's in a sense, public relations is a subset of broader marketing or marketing communications sector. So what I basically was a specialist in public relations and communications. So it was my job to manage the news, I suppose, of my particular client. So when they had new products releasing or a particular story to tell, we would draft up a strategy of the best way and most effective way to communicate that news via the media and increasingly social media, of course, out to the public or to the customers. So that's public relations in a nutshell. And obviously, public relations is a subset of broader marketing. So I realised that if I was going to progress, there's a couple of routes I could have gone, but I really quite liked broadening and I guess going horizontally across the sector of marketing and trying to understand rather than just sticking within the PR vertical, which is quite a tight vertical. Go push out horizontally across the rest of the marketing sphere.
So, really, you had quite a lot of great opportunities present themselves to you while you were at Sony. So moving into marketing, tell us how that continued on for all the years that you were there.
Sure. So I guess my first break was it's consumer electronics, so it's stuff's always moving. It's a fast-paced environment. But what happened was there was what became clear was that as a business we didn't truly understand Sony didn't truly understand its customers. So there was a strategic directive in place to embark on this big insights project. And I was there as a freelance guy working in the PR and comms teams, opportunity present itself to go full time as a salaried employee and look after this insights project. Which, if you think about it, I guess a bit of retrospective here. It was a great opportunity. It was completely outside my scope. Completely outside my understanding, but I realised that I needed to embrace this and learn and apply some communications knowledge and approach to understanding insights, and really what it allowed me to do was to understand Sony's customer potentially better than most people within the Sony organization. So that was a great grounding, because obviously marketing is only most effective when you can understand your customer and your customer's needs.
It's fascinating. And so you've thoroughly enjoyed your time in Sydney at Sony, and then some changes happened.
Yes, so I worked my way through the Insights group, worked my way through and up in a much broader marketing role. And been no news to anybody that the consumer electronics industry has gone through a series of changes. So the businesses contract as well as expand. They also contract, and it was during one of those phases of contraction that my role became redundant. So I took a package from Sony, and we talked. I know you and I talked about this a lot, but it was kind of. It was enabling as it was scary. It was very scary to have, I've got a wife, a child, a house, a dog, dependents, all of this, and I don't have any income. There's a scariness about that. But then there's also a freedom as well to go. I wake up some mornings and go, well, literally, the world is my oyster right now. I can do anything. I'm not pigeonholed into a job that defined me for so long. I guess what I started to do was think about, because I said previously, I kind of understand the technology, and I've always been a bit of a gadget guy, and I was thinking increasingly about the world of apps and app development. I had been. Now we're doing a podcast, but I had been listening to, that's how I learned about apps, by listening to podcasts on my way to work. So I'm riding my scooter up to Sony's office and listening to a podcast on the way about how to develop apps and what the App Store was all about, and App Store optimizations and development techniques and where to get designs done and all of this sort of stuff. So I kind of threw myself into that to some degree, and I threw myself into it not as a route and a new job, not as an entrepreneur per se, but more as I tried to apply a marketing spin on it. So I wanted to use my work that I was doing with the apps to understand about the market a bit better and to understand about consumers, because a consumer parting with cash is a great thing for a marketer to understand. And if I can design a product that can extricate cash from a customer wherever they are in the world, because don't forget, global audience. That was a really interesting thing. So you see from my, I've got apps in there from. So I've got my first ever app was a pinball app. Okay, it's very simple pinball. You just tap the screen and the ball goes up and down. But what I did was, who's going to be downloading things in the store? Well, what's hot in the market right now? And at the time, it was around the time of the FIFA World Cup. So I kind of did a Brazilian sort of samba theme to a pinball app, just to try and capitalize on that news of the day and what was current. And that still remains my most downloaded app.
Isn't that fantastic? You should do a Rugby World Cup app as well.
Well, it's a bit late now, Joan. I think if I was still in it, I would have done it by now. But it's understanding. Marketing is about fishing where the fish are, and if the fish are interested and the world is abuzz with in that instance the Football World Cup, then it makes absolute sense to fish where those fish are and deliver them a product. So when they're caught, they're looking for something to do and be involved in this world of football. Well, why not download a free app from Reuben Lawrence on the App Store and have a go?
Yeah, what a great idea. Tell us about the other apps that you developed as well.
So there was I guess one of the ones that I created from scratch, which was interesting. So my daughter of the time was she was 18 months, learning to kind of get her head around some words. So I downloaded an app for the iPad, which is one of those flashcard apps. You swipe it, it's apple, you swipe it again, carrot, you swipe it again, banana, whatever it happens to be. So there's lots of those on the market, and I downloaded a couple, and I heard her one day, and she was sort of swiping through, as kids kind of get all the technology, right? She was swiping through, and she started saying banana, and she started talking with an American accent. And I was sitting in my Sydney home going, this isn't something about this isn't quite right. And I know the global market and all that sort of stuff, but she's 18 months and she's learning to speak like with an American accent. I thought, well, it's going to happen at some point, but don't let it be now. So I tried to look on the market for an app that actually that was flashcards, but that had an Australian accent, and I couldn't find one. So I thought, well, I'll do it myself. So built one of those. So that's in the market now. Again, it's applying the marketing insight. So it's not just a free app. There's 3 versions. There's a free app. There's a regular app, which is slightly paid with a little bit more functionality, and then there's a pro app with everything in it. Again, I'm always trying to apply a bit of marketing insight to the apps. There was another app that I've done, or rather a series of apps, which is in the photo market. It's called Hashy. And basically what it allows you to do is to very quickly take a picture and apply one of 25 sort of sayings to your picture, and then share it really quickly. So basically in 4 clicks, you can take a picture, put a caption, like a pre-prepared one of 25 different captions, and put it out to the market. So I did one, Hashy free, standard things like, love it, hate it, Insta good, pick of the day, all that kind of stuff that you would put to a picture when you share it. But then I thought, well, what's happening in the market? Well, the In-Betweeners movie was coming out. So I thought, well, why don't I do an In-Betweeners version? Because the In-Betweeners, the In-Betweeners, Jane, right?
The movie, yes.
Yes. So, big sort of cultural phenomenon of the In-Betweeners, and they've got their catchphrases, right? So I thought this kind of suits. So I'm going to get their catchphrases and apply them to my app and release a obviously unofficial In-Betweeners version of my app. But of course, I was trying to get it out as the movie hit, but I hadn't seen the movie to be able to put the captions in, or rather so actually what happened was I was listening to the radio one day, and there was they were interviewers, so the In-Betweener stars were doing a radio interview. And there was an option to call in or write in with questions. So I wrote in to the radio station and said and asked the cast, what were your favourite sayings and catchphrases coming out of the new movie? So they quite happily reeled off all the catchphrases, which I then wrote down and built them into my app, and then released it before the movie came out.
How perfect was that? Good timing, Ruben. Very good timing.
So look, I had a lot of fun with it. It was great fun. It's still there. The beauty about apps is they're still in market, and we've got 13 apps in market, primarily in the iOS store. And every day I get a little email through from App Annie, which is one of the sort of insights tools that you can freely subscribe to, and it tells me very nicely how much money I made overnight. So they just keep on going.
How fantastic. I've actually got one of your apps as well, the travel app that you created, which is really good, with all those travel tips, which I think is really helpful. But what a great way to spend your time in transition, is to get creative, have a lot of fun, monetize what you can do as well while you are still looking for a new role.
Monetize in the loosest possible sense. This is as much a journey for me, and really what it enabled me to do is to walk into an interview, and I did a few, Jane. Walk into interviews and say, okay, well, this is what happened, and this is what I'm doing now, and very clearly position that I'm still learning. I'm just taken 6 months off, and I'm sitting on a beach somewhere. This is about progression and about growth. So it really opened up a series of interesting conversations when you start to talk about this in an interview situation.
And it's so important for those people in transition as well, because very often if the gap between employment is an extended period, the employers want to know, what have you been doing? So if you've been staying focused, learning something new, making a contribution somehow, or even if you decide to travel, when you come back, there's got to be something that you've done that's been of benefit, that has made you an even better person and even more employable. And for you, with your really positive attitude, with what else can I do, and also you were having fun at the time, you made that gap period really, really productive. And it sounds like ultimately it assisted you into marketing yourself into a new role.
It did, because marketing now it's changed. It's changed a lot since when I first started out all those years back in a small PR agency in Chelsea. It's all about digital. It's all about social. It's all about directly connecting and having conversations with, rather than just firing out a press release or buying an ad and that's it. it's changed so much, and really, I had to and have to embrace that. I had to during my transition period, and that's hopefully what I'm illustrating with the app development, but also I'm learning all of that stuff that I learned. I'm applying on a daily basis now in my role.
Yeah, and making that transition successfully. I mean, it's very inspiring for other people. But actually, what you've highlighted is staying current and up to date with the trends in your industry are so important. And it's the same thing when it comes to career transition and looking for a job, because in the old days you'd look in the Saturday papers for a classified, and then you'd submit a letter, maybe you'd make a phone call, you submit a letter and apply for a job. But nowadays it's so different, and with the advent of LinkedIn becoming so popular as well, it really is the networking and demonstrating that you're up to speed with technology that keeps you marketable. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst the new tools about ways that you apply for jobs, it's never been easier. It's never been simpler, and it's very easy to pump out 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. You apply for anything, right? So I pity the guys on the other end wading through all this stuff. And I guess the challenge is for anyone that's applying for a new role is how do you stand out? And I know we talked about it a lot, Jane. And for me, I guess the magic that I found whilst going through this process was to find out where the job was available and then apply your network to that particular role. So if there was a job going at so I found out about this job that I now have at NBC Universal in Singapore. I found out about it through a recruiter. And then I realised that one of my first questions with the recruiter is, okay, well, who's the company? Who's the company? Who's the company? Because if I can understand that, then I can understand how I can interact with that company and where my connections are with that company that might give me an advantage or might get me in to meet and talk. So I realised I knew an old friend of mine from London actually worked at NBC Universal, and so I pinged him my CV. I said, "Hey, I heard about this job. Can you connect me with your HR people?" And that it puts you I believe it puts you further up the pile, if you like. And my main aim at that point is just get me in. If I can come in and I can have a chat and then meet you and talk about stuff and ask those questions to really uncover what this job's about, and ultimately, and I think this is so important, show the enthusiasm for the business. No one wants to hire anyone that's just going to chug along. They want to hire someone that's actually got enthusiasm for this. And the world of TV and the world of media entertainment, which is the business I'm in now, is extremely thrilling, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, it's so wonderful. I mean, I love it that you're such a great success story. Now, also, because you've made these transitions from London to Sydney to Singapore, and it has been challenging, how did you find making that move with your family? Because now you've got a daughter as well. So moving from Sydney to Singapore and uprooting your Aussie wife to go to Singapore, what were the challenges for you as a professional, moving country, moving city, uprooting family, and then settling into a new life?
Look, it's absolutely it's a logistical challenge, right? It just is. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether you move to the next street or to another country. Logistically, you've got to do this. You pretty much got to do the same thing. So you like anything, you understand what you've got to achieve. You set a path and how you're going to get there, and you just work through that. It's a challenge, absolutely. But we, as a family, we see it as it's an adventure. And my daughter's. She's just started into a new school, and it's all an adventure. It's all exciting, and we talk about when we lived in Sydney, and we talk about living in Singapore now, and so she understands that it's a journey. It's been a challenge, but it's been a journey, and that's how we see it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm really glad that you've settled in well. And as you know, I spent many years in Singapore. So when this opportunity came up, it was like, yes, what a great place to be, and very exciting for all of your family members as well. Now, Reuben, I could sit and talk to you all day. However, I know that you need to get off and be and do all the things that you need to do. Can you leave us with your top tips for someone who is looking to get into PR and or marketing for success?
Sure. I guess a couple of tips from my side. I've mentioned it before, but enthusiasm. You've really got to show. You got to understand it, and you've got to show that you're going to love it, because it's not a 9 to 5. You've got to put the hours in, but there's rewards that come with that. So I'd say my number one would be. Make sure you're coming into everything, and that's everything with enthusiasm and passion to add value to the team environment, to the client, to the agency, whatever it happens to be. Mm-hmm. Say you've got to be able to demonstrably solve problems. So, we can all sit there and, we joke about it in the office. We can all sit there and drive our desk and, move emails from one folder to another. But it's not about that. I think it's, you've really got to show that you're solving problems, and you're demonstrating that you're moving stuff forward, and you're trying to get some runs on the board, and you're trying to achieve the broader ROIs of the business. And I guess ultimately, from a team perspective, two things, have humility for other people, in an increasingly collaborative world. I think, the ability to collaborate and be and work well in a matrix. It's not just your boss, your rest of your team environment, but a broader stakeholder environment, and that could be anywhere in the world, is critical. And ultimately, and it's very easy to say. And I talk a lot, but I'd say, the ability to listen more than you talk when you're starting out is a good thing.
Oh, well, that's great. Oh, we got an extra one there. We've got four top tips: enthusiasm and passion, solving problems, getting runs on the board, being humble, and really projecting that humility for your team and all the stakeholders, and right at the end, make sure that you listen so that you understand the customer.
Indeed.
And the client. Fantastic. That's been so interesting, Reuben. Thank you so much for your time. We've been listening to Reuben Lawrence, the Marketing Director for Southeast Asia at NBC Universal. And I'm very lucky to have grabbed you this morning before you headed off to work. So thanks so much for your time, Reuben. And I look forward to having you back on the show again and telling us more about how your career progresses in time.
Absolutely, Jane. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.